Here's the deal. Sales isn't about pushing harder, talking faster, or flooding inboxes. That's noise, not strategy. Real business development? It's about presence, precision, and knowing exactly how the room feels before you open your mouth. Jake Stahl, author of Own the Room, How to Communicate to Be Seen, Heard, and Respected, has spent over 30 years training teams across 6 countries and 47 states, teaching solopreneurs how to turn conversations into conversion. Known as the mind mechanic, people who have been trained by him say he has the uncanny ability to break down human behavior and rebuild it into real, repeatable influence. This is where communication becomes your unfair advantage. Welcome to Own the Room with Jake Stahl.
A big announcement to make here on the show. Our former name, Lead Gen Reboot, has now been changed to Own the Room.
Yes, for sure. Well, John, we talked a lot about generating leads and we talked a lot about what to do with those leads and how to authentically communicate. But the reality, John, what we're talking about is owning the room that you're in. And whether that Zoom is a Zoom room or a live room or you're on the phone, the whole question really is, how do I build trust so that I'm seen, heard, and respected? So I recently, John, wrote a book. It should be out in the next month called Own the Room, How to Communicate to Be Seen, Heard, and Respected. And so we are changing the name of the podcast to Own the Room. It'll be the same psychological techniques. It'll be the same way to win sales and build trust. It's just going to be under a different flagship name.
So this is like the first episode, but also the 55th episode. So we got a lot of experience under our belt, but a new direction that really better encapsulates the audience that this is for.
Yeah, and that's kind of the funny thing, John, because we always talk about why first impressions matter, but we're going to try making a 53rd impression and make it more like our first impression.
And so here we go. It's owning the room. I love the concept. And you talked about those 3 things: seen, heard, respected. But then
Yeah,
there's
for
also
sure.
our audience members saying, well, what about, Lead Gen Reboot, the importance of reframing how we do our sales? How come this doesn't abandon that concept? It just actually expands on it more.
Well, the fact of the matter is when we do sales, it's all about building trust and it's about building safety for the people that are our prospects, right? They want to feel safe. They want to feel heard. And so really the whole premise behind the show is not going to change. We just didn't want to limit it to the area of just lead gen and how to work with leads. We wanted to break this out into solopreneurs and founders so that they can build their business using the techniques that we talk about. And that isn't always, John, just about lead gen. That's about human connection.
Yeah. And so for those who may not be familiar with your story, you always say that the people that you're in the best position to serve are the people that you once were. And I believe that wholeheartedly. So you came out as a solopreneur, correct? And went on this
Yep.
journey yourself. So how
Yeah.
does that inform everything in the book and everything we're going to share on the show?
Well, John, as you know, and some of the listeners know, I was a opioid addict for a couple of years. I have been clean for 13 years, and that cleanliness has continued unabated. Uh, but the whole issue was, John, before that happened, I was a speaker all over the country and in 6 different countries outside the US. Uh, but when that addiction happened, I found myself fighting to be recognized as someone other than an addict. So it was important that I reinvent the way people see me and make sure that I can build a sense of trust. And that was all about human relationships. And it was a long process, but during that journey, Strata was created. And so was the whole premise of just how to communicate to be seen, heard, and respected. So I got here not as an invention in a boardroom or a brainstorming session. I got here out of survival and just becoming somebody that people could see again and not want to avoid.
That lived experience is huge because that you may not be going
Yeah.
through that right now, but you are going through something. And this could be, what helps you through that as you continue your fight to be seen, heard, respected. So, first impressions are so huge when it comes to this. Is it true that you never get a second chance to make a first impression?
I think that is largely true. There's some lines of thought that say in the first 5 to 7 seconds, people are judging you, and that's the amount of time you have to build that first impression. But there's other lines of thought, John, that say this happens in milliseconds,
Mm,
that people's brains process so fast that they form an opinion of you before you even really get started. And that is the lens they use to view all future encounters with you.
wow.
So if that first, depending on line of thought you take, the first milliseconds or the first 5 to 7 seconds, if those don't go well, it really doesn't matter what your story is because you've already set the frame around your relationship.
Either way, it's short. And so here we
It's,
are
it's really short.
trying to
Yeah,
make
for
a
sure.
trying to make a first impression for the second time on the show. But in all
Yeah.
seriousness, um, you're meeting somebody for the first time. You want to own the room. You want to make that solid first impression. What are some of the key things you got to do?
So one of the things you can do is first of all is own your energy. So establish a calm confidence. And that can be as simple as feeling your feet on the ground, making sure your spine is erect. And there's an odd psychological thing that happens when you puff your chest out and smile. It almost tells your brain that you're confident and you're ready. So even as something as simple as faking it with a puffed out chest and a smile you may not mean can actually alter the way your brain takes care of the next few moments.
Hmm.
So when you enter with that calm confidence, not rushed, not robotic, just, you know what? It's great to finally connect. I've been looking forward to this. You notice, John,
That's
there was no hi, how are you in there.
yeah, yeah. Okay, what happened to the small talk, Jake?
But that is the small talk. So you're
Hmm.
acknowledging the people that you are meeting with and you're telling them, "Hey, it's great to connect. I was looking forward to this. So please tell me about yourself." And that replaces what so many solopreneurs do nowadays, which is just starting with a hi, how are you? And we've discussed this on other shows. That's a throwaway phrase that nobody wants to hear the answer to. And there's no reason in using it. So acknowledge the person in front of you. Great to connect. Looking forward to this. Tell me about yourself.
Yeah. The other thing you're doing there is you're starting with them, and you talk a lot about
Yes,
listening first. So even listening first could be a first impression in some ways.
in a lot of ways. Absolutely. So you're showing that you're paying attention. And the other thing, John, is something you and I do a lot, and that's use the first name.
Hmm.
So if I can use the first name right away and say, John, thanks for carving out time today, huge difference. Because when people hear their name, it's recognition and it gets their attention and they know that you know who they are. And that makes a huge first impression.
I see what you did there. You said the other thing, John, is that, and that's, I don't know if you even did that on purpose because you just do
I
that
do.
in general. Like you might not even have to think about it anymore. But 5 to 7 seconds is such a short amount of time. And
It is.
my curiosity is I've had a lot of rocky starts to relationships. I mean, just ask my wife about our first date. Like, and
Tell
they,
me about your first date, John. Let's hear it.
oh my gosh, we went to the nature reserve. Can you imagine? A real romantic, huh?
I don't even know what that is. What's a nature reserve?
It's like a place where they like you're not allowed to build buildings and hunt and stuff because it's like a
Oh,
sanctuary for the birds. And so
oh,
we went to
interesting.
the and we walked around. I thought it'd be a nice quiet place, but there was a lot of mud and it kind of didn't smell good. And Long story short, it probably wasn't the best first impression, right? But it still turned out okay. I mean, we're married, and we have these relationships sometimes where it feels like we get off to a bad start, but it still turns out okay. So how is that consistent with this message about first impressions being everything?
Well, there's got to be that willingness to extend a relationship. So the fact that your wife had an interest in you dating and you had an interest in her, it tends to give you the right or the latitude to self-adjust if something doesn't quite hit right. Because, in a dating situation, all sorts of weird things can happen. And we say stupid stuff because we're trying to impress and at the
Hmm.
same time we're trying to be cool. So there are certain times where latitude is given by both people. But John, when you're a solopreneur building a business, that's generally not the rule of thumb. You're meeting with people on Zoom, you're meeting with them on the phone, you're meeting over lunch. Not a lot of latitude there. People want to know you mean business, and you better be hitting on all cylinders.
But maybe the first impression isn't always even what we think it is. So I might have thought that was a bad first impression because overall the evening might have not gone how I wanted it to. But that doesn't mean that those first 5 to 7 seconds weren't solid, even in a unideal environment. I mean, can you really make a first impression if you're in a crowded room at an event and you only have a few seconds to exchange business cards?
Well, here's where you bring up an outstanding point. We're making the assumption, or we're talking about making the first impression when we meet them right away. But, John, the first impression starts way before that because they look you up on social media and maybe they look up your LinkedIn profile and they see pictures of you. I know with my wife, she actually did a background check. She paid 35 bucks to get a background
Wow.
check on me. So those are where the first impressions a lot of times are made before the two of you even talk. And on previous shows, we even talked about how your headshot is crucial to that first impression. But
That's it.
many times, John, to your point, first impression isn't when you meet, it's way before that.
Okay, how about this is a different angle to take too. How about digital communications too? So you're hopping on
Of
a
course.
call with a client. Now, what about your emails? What do those say about you that might set you up for success or failure?
Exactly right. That's 100%. Your emails, your texts, anything you've posted, all of those shape the story. All of those start to build the who is John or who is Jake before I meet them. And John, make no mistake, it's a piece of data we could never accurately study, but you can bet there are thousands of people where somebody wanted to do business with another person and they saw a Facebook post that rubbed them the wrong way, or they saw something on LinkedIn that just didn't feel right. So they decided not to do business at all.
Yeah.
I would bet the number of times that's happened charts into the millions. And we just don't know it because it's something we can't measure.
And so this goes back to, first of all, the concept of persuasion. And second
Correct.
of all, we have this idea that we can control what our first impressions are. Well, we only can to the extent of how we present ourselves to everyone. We only
Right.
can if we're authentically ourselves. I can't make a first impression to you that's different than the first impression I make to somebody else because you can't be two people at the same time.
Yes. And especially with social media, when you put something out, you put it out and it's interpreted however that person viewing you is interpreting it. I always tell my clients, you don't write your own emails.
Mhm.
They write the email in their head when they get it. And if they're in a bad mood, the email could come across poor. If they're in a great mood, they could forgive it if it came across poor, or they may view it favorably.
Hmm.
So we often don't write our own posts or our own communications. People write it in their head when they receive it.
Oh, that's a good point right there. But we still have a role in making sure we're maximizing
We do.
how it comes across. So again, 5 to 7 seconds. Man, that's such a
Yep.
short amount of time. It
It
means
is,
that.
but
Go
that
ahead.
means you got to focus.
Yeah.
Be intentional.
Yeah. You know what else it means? It means that if we haven't made a good first impression, nobody's even listening to us right now.
That's very true.
How demoralizing is that? But obviously, we did make an okay first impression because here you are. You're still checking this out.
Yeah, yeah, our numbers are growing, which is great. So it means the impressions we're making must be half decent.
So, what would you say to the solopreneur who's checking this out and thinking, oh gosh, my first impressions are rough. I'm breaking all the cardinal rules here. First of all, I say, hi, how are you? Every time I pick up the phone. Then I talk about the weather. That's a terrible first impression, no matter how good the weather is. And then my profile picture is not optimized. My LinkedIn profile doesn't look great. And I post pictures of me partying on Instagram. What do you say to the solopreneur? What's the first step to help them get that in line?
Change your profile picture right away. That's the first thing people look at
Hmm.
is they want to see who they're going to be dealing with. And what your picture tells people, your headshot tells people is what they can expect. I'll give you a great example. I was talking with a client the other day and they said, look at my profile picture and tell me what you see. It was very difficult to tell the client what I saw because
Hmm.
what I saw was extremely unprofessional. And it was something that gave an impression almost exactly the opposite of their headline. So it's important to be consistent across your messaging. So if you want to sound professional, look professional in your headshot. Now listen, if you run a clown college and you want to dress up in a clown suit for your headshot, that's congruent. So
Right.
absolutely feel free to do it. But I don't think people understand the importance of the headshot. And John, just to recover something we covered in a previous story, big smile, good posture leaning in, and a slight tilt of the head. The three primary components of showing trust in a headshot.
That's right. Those three big things. And we're talking about a literal headshot for your social
Right.
media profiles. And this is why you can't just say that there's one universal way to have a headshot. Should you be wearing a suit and tie? Should you be, should your dog be in the photo? I mean, there are so many different things. And some of these so called social media gurus think that they have the answer because it might be what worked for them.
Right.
But what works for them might not work for you. You just have to do what's authentically you to create the best possible first impression.
Right. And think about in the picture what's relevant. So you said about holding your dog. Is the dog relevant to the business that you're doing? And is that the impression that you want to give? I'm not saying holding your dog is bad. I'm just saying think about how much it broadcasts who you are and is the dog relevant to what you do and the clients that you want to attract?
Well, if you're a dog walker, it makes a hell of a lot of sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense.
So there you go. It's just these little things that a lot of people don't put into a lot of thought into what they do with their profile picture. At least not as much on social media as they might up on Tinder or something like that.
Right.
Yet those first impressions do matter. It's very, very interesting. What kind of research is there that backs this up?
Well, there's a lot of research that, first of all, for the three primary components of the headshot that we talked about, there's a lot of psychological research and even profilers that back up that that's the case. So these are
Okay.
the big wigs, the people that it's their living to understand how to make a good first impression or how to judge someone by a picture. But I think it's also common sense, right, John? So if I see a picture of somebody and it's obvious somebody else was cropped out, you know,
Yeah.
maybe you want to pick a different profile picture.
Yeah.
If you're a professional who's a coach and the picture you use is of you skydiving and they can't see your face and you've got goggles on, maybe you want to think twice. If you lead adventures in skydiving, then that's a great picture to use.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't think the importance of a picture it can be overstated.
Yeah. And so a lot of key things here to take away if you're the solopreneur. Own your energy, use the other person's name, sound like a human. Another thing I know you've mentioned is signaling value early on in the
Yeah.
conversation. What do you mean by that?
Well, what can you give to somebody as a result of being on the call?
Okay.
So maybe, John, you and I get together, run a call, and I can say, hey, John, you know what? I just saw this new microphone that came out. Love to get your feedback on it. And whether you say it's garbage or it's great isn't near as important as the fact that you know I did my homework on you to start and I wanted to get your opinion. And John, as we've talked about before, the best way to flatter somebody is to ask for their opinion.
Interesting. Okay. So find some way to flatter them or provide value to them, maybe something along the lines too. If you're looking for another idea of, oh, hey, I know somebody that you should know. Let me connect the two of you
Right.
early on in the conversation, right? Something along those lines. And then you also talk about match. We've talked about this before, this whole idea of matching somebody's mood, tempo. That builds trust too, doesn't it?
It does. And in NLP, we call this pacing. So if I meet somebody and I mirror their mood and I want to bring them up to my speed, the way to do that is to match where they are, tone, rhythm, mood overall, and then gradually work them up to where I am, which may be enthusiasm or excitement. But matching a person or mirroring them in the beginning is really important because, John, remember the whole idea behind a first impression is people like people who are like them.
Right.
So the more I can be like them and provide value, the more apt I am to be able to create that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. So those five things really key for the first 5 to 7 seconds or milliseconds of your first impression, something that we can do intentionally. And like you say, Jake, I think you coined the phrase, right? You never get a second chance at a first impression. Did you make that up?
Oh my God, yeah, that was me. Oh, yeah. They just don't credit me well in those conversations. So,
And here
but
we
it's
are.
it's my way of giving back to the world is coming up with brilliant sayings like that everybody adopts.
You got any others?
Don't take a wooden nickel was mine.
Okay. Was that
So that
you?
was a big one. Yep.
Wow.
And look before you leap, that was me too.
I've heard that across the world.
Yeah, yep.
Who knew?
That's how quickly my stuff catches on.
This came from Jake. He is owning the room, and that's
I
the name of the
am.
show now. Own the room.
It is. So, John, just out of curiosity, how well did that first date go? I really want to go back to this first date thing.
Man, it was rough because it was awkward because I felt like I should have done a better job. We were walking around kind of around the exterior of this pond. And there wasn't much further to walk, so we ended up just stopping on the bridge and kind of looking at each other and talking. But looking back, that was a solid start place to start in a relationship because there wasn't expectations. There wasn't the shame or insecurity of how much a dinner cost. There was no dinner. And so to me, looking back, that was like, all right, so it did work out in hindsight. But boy, in the
Yeah.
moment, I was like, gee, that was a rough one. I've been on better first dates than that.
But her first impression of you started before that,
So
right?
that's what I'm learning through this discussion is like, okay, the fact that we were there on that date and she trusted me enough to take her to the nature preserve. Like that
Right?
fact, that's really more of the first impression, not what happened during those conversations.
Correct. So she had already formed an impression of you through whatever mode, whether she saw your picture or you had text or emails before that or
Yep,
phone
definitely.
conversations. So chances are you being with her in the preserve might have been a sixth or seventh impression. It may not have even been the first.
I think that's accurate. We did this thing back in the day. Now it's back in the day because it's something kids don't even do anymore, but called Snapchat. And so we did
Oh,
that. I don't know if you
okay.
heard of that.
I
Snapchat,
have.
very
Yeah,
popular. Do you have a Snapchat?
I don't.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably your time was just a little bit before that. You did Facebook, right? Facebook DMs.
Are you saying I'm old?
Well, I didn't say you wrote letters on typewriters. I'm just saying you probably did Facebook DMs. I
My
thought that.
wife and I met on Match, believe it or not.
Oh, okay. Match.com,
Yeah.
right? That was the
Yep.
thing back then
And
too.
that was a great lesson in first impressions too, because I had a picture of me that I thought was great in front of my car. And I can't tell you how many comments I got that, oh, you're showing off your car. Oh boy, are you shallow? And it's like, I didn't even give the car a second thought. I just thought I looked great in the picture.
Well, what kind of car
So
was it?
a BMW.
Well, Tim, you didn't think you were okay. That one to me is like you're showing off.
I was not. It was just a great picture. I liked the outfit I was wearing. I didn't even give the car a second thought. But the
Did
first impression it gave was horrible. So I wound up taking the picture down.
so was that the picture that she first saw of you?
No, she saw some of the other pictures.
Okay.
The I had like 4 or 5 pictures up, and that was one of them, and I took that picture down. So she was looking at others,
So
and
if
yeah.
yeah, if you have a BMW, it's wise not to show it off unless you're looking to make a different kind of first impression, but we don't recommend that here. And
Well,
we
it's kind of funny because I wasn't looking to show it off. I
right.
didn't even give that a second thought. And that's why I'm encouraging solopreneurs, look at your picture and look at the impression you're giving from another set of eyes, or even better yet, have a friend of yours look at it
Yeah.
and say, what's the first impression you get when you look at this picture? Because had I been smart, that's what I would have done. I would have gone to a friend and said, these are the pictures I want to post. What do you think? And hopefully one of them would have said, Jake, you're being a knucklehead. Don't use that picture. And I could have saved myself a lot of ugly DMs from people.
Yeah. Oh, yikes. Well, it all
Yeah,
works out in the end, but you
it
got
does.
to consider if you're a solopreneur, what is the metaphorical BMW in your profile picture
Ooh, I like that.
or in your
That's very
profile?
good.
So, yeah, I mean, you're not just
Um,
talking to solopreneurs here. We're talking to single men and women. We're covering all the bases today. First impressions matter
we
across the
are.
board.
We're solving all problems today. But John, I think the bottom line is understand that by the time you meet people, the first impressions are already done
Yep.
in most cases. They've looked you up on Instagram, they've looked you up on Facebook or LinkedIn. So do your profiles tell the picture of who you are? And can it hurt you? And in some cases, mine included, it did set me back.
Yes.
So look at the first impression you're giving everywhere, see if it represents you.
Yeah. The good news about this is that while you don't get a second chance to make a first impression, you do have the opportunity to change your first impression across different conversations, right?
Correct. Yep.
So you're never going
Yep.
to get back somebody's first impression unless you somehow, I don't know, unless they suffer from amnesia and somehow they totally forget that you exist. But you can tweak what you did wrong and move forward. And now Jake is married because he took down the BMW photo.
I'm sure it was just because of that. But yes, you're right. I do believe that you don't get a second chance to make a first impression is largely true. But I also believe that if you put enough effort into the second impression, you can change people's minds.
That's right. And so we hope that this impression has been solid on you. If it has, we know there's so much value in this conversation that somebody you know needs to know. So share this with somebody who is close to you, the solopreneur in your life who might need to know this. And you give them a little gentle nudge. You're like, hey, yeah, you just this could be good for you. And be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's on Apple or Spotify, and drop us a review or rating if you're enjoying the show. Jake, let's go make some solid first impressions.
All right, John, thank you as always.
Thanks for checking out Own the Room with Jake Stahl. If you've gotten value from this episode, share it with the solopreneur in your life who wants to know how to communicate to be seen, heard, and respected. Review and rate the show wherever you check out podcasts. And grab your copy of Own the Room, How to Communicate to be Seen, Heard, and Respected. We'll catch you next week on Own the Room.